إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب.
May the peace and blessings of Allah the Almighty be upon us. This is Islam and Science, a program brought to you by the Wahab Adam Studios of MTA International Africa. The very purpose of this program is for us to get to understand the interrelationship between science and Islam. Many believe that science was born out of religion, and others think that is not so and that it is a myth. On this show, we try to bring up discussions on topical issues that will lead us to understanding on such issues. Today, the topic for discussion is calling the Azan and Iqamat to the ears of newly born babies. In Islam, when a child is born, the parents or whoever that is around, that is if the parents are Muslim, then they would call the Azan to the right ear of the child and then the Iqamat to the left. Now we are trying to find out on the show whether this thing is really that important. What is its import? Is it necessary? I am joined today to do the discussion by two gentlemen. One is Maulvi Sharif bin Jafar. He is a lecturer at Jamia International. Jamia International is the Ahmadiyya School of Theology here in Ghana. He sits to my immediate left. And next to him is Dr. Ishraq Nur Ismail. He is a medical practitioner at the Tema General Hospital. Gentlemen, I welcome you to Islam and Science. Yes, Maulvi, is it that necessary to call the Azan and Iqamat into the ears of a newly born baby? What is the philosophy behind this? And what is the Quranic position on it?
Thank you very much for the question. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. If you ask if it's important, it's a yes. It's very important to do that because it was the sunnah of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was the practice of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that whenever a child is born, he instructs that the Azan should be called in the right ear and then the Iqamat in the left.
Okay.
Now you ask why, what's the reason behind all this?
Yeah.
To explain this, I would like to first state that the very essence of our creation is to worship Allah the Almighty.
Okay.
Allah the Almighty says, "Ma khalaqtul jinna wal insa illa liya'budun."
Okay.
That I have not created men and men and jinn, that is men of smaller, young men of lower ranks and men of higher ranks, but illa liya'budun, but to what? Worship me.
Okay.
So hence Allah outlines the very essence of our creation, that is to worship He Allah. So if a new child a new soul is being brought to the world to start a life for which he's going to account for, then it's very essential, it's very prudent that we start, or we make him well aware, even beforehand, that remember, as you are here, you acquire wealth, you acquire everything, but the foremost priority, the foremost aim of your life is to what? Worship God Almighty. Okay. Hence, the Holy Prophet ﷺ instructed that as soon as the child is born, we call the Azan in the right ear. And whoever knows the wordings of Azan, it talks about the oneness of God, that no one, we should not associate partners with him. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala falah, and all that. So all this is telling us that God is one, don't worship any other God beside God, and believe the Holy Prophet ﷺ to be the true messenger of Allah, come to success. That is to say, whenever you hear this call, always know that it's really calling you to success.
Okay.
So don't run away from this call.
Okay.
So this and many reasons why the Holy Prophet instructed that whenever the child is born, make it a point to call the Azan in the right ear and then the Iqama in the left ear.
Okay. Doctor, how does the human ear function, especially with regards to the newly born babies?
All right. So then, when the fetus is developing in the womb of the mother,
Okay.
Amongst all the 5 senses of the human being, it is the hearing which is the first to start its development.
Okay.
So as at the 24th week of mother's gestation,
Okay.
baby has started listening.
Okay.
That's why it's important when the mother is pregnant, the things that she herself says, the things that she hears, should be good things.
Okay.
Because the baby begins to pick transmissions from the outside world
Okay.
into itself and begins to imbibe whatever the baby is hearing.
Okay.
So in the 24th week, that's about 5 months and 3 weeks, the baby has started hearing everything. So that is the beginning. And then, as the baby is being born, as we know in Islam, that we are all born with the belief of Islam.
Yes.
But depends on where you come out from,
Okay.
will determine what factors will relate to your religion.
Okay.
So if you come up out of an Islamic home, you become a Muslim. And if you come up out of a Christian home, you become a Christian, and the other religions.
Okay.
And so the understanding is that the hearing is so important. That's how come it develops very early during the gestational age. When it comes to listening, what happens is that whenever there is a production of sound,
Yeah.
the ears are divided into 3 different parts. So we have the external ear, we have the middle ear, and then we have the inner ear. And all these 3 places have individual important roles each is playing.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the external, it gathers all the information that is related to sound, trying to bring it into the middle ear.
Okay.
And the middle ear, so the external ear is what we see.
Okay.
The outer part of the ear is the external ear. Once it goes inside, it meets what we call the tympanic membrane, and it's like a drum. So it depends on the extent to which you strike the drum. That will tell how much input should be sent into the final destination, which is the brain, for interpretation. So in the middle ear is made up of bones, a series of bones, and that is where we have the smallest bone in the world. And it is that bone which is responsible for making us hear. That is how great God is. So these bones also kind of transduce the sound waves. When it gets it from the tympanic membrane, which is the drum, it transduces the waves into the inner ear. So at the inner ear, we have nerves, which pick up these transmissions and move them directly to the appropriate part of the brain, which is responsible for interpretation. So when you talk about a young baby, a neonate, the baby is able to hear those words, but then it's not so developed to be able to interpret exactly what you mean. But then the mere fact that the baby is able to listen and is able to register those transmitted sound waves into itself, then it's very important that whatever we tell the baby should be a good thing. So then if we are beginning with the name of God, the name of Allah, then it's imperative for such a baby to be able to listen to such words. So that's how come we have people, we have heard of scholars who were Hufaz at the very tender age, because their mothers were reciting the Quran to them, they were listening to these words, and by the time they came up, they had a storeroom of words yet to be interpreted, words yet to be connected. And whenever you hear anything, it's kind of neurons that come together. So within your brain, a neuron and the other neuron will come up to form a synapse and try and form a memory. So the more of these neurons that you are having to form the synapses, the stronger the memory is. So if from infancy you begin to hear good words, by the time you grow, you'll be used to good words, and that will impact greatly on the life of such an individual.
Okay. So now, if going by what doctor is saying, and then that supports somehow your position that when the child is born new, they have the tendency to pick these things, even though they cannot interpret them, but they may somehow be useful to them in their later ages. Why do we insist on only the Azan, calling the Azan? There are several other things that we could have equally said to these newly born babies?
Yeah, firstly, let me say that the main reason is the sunnah of the Holy Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Okay.
That was what he did.
Yeah.
He knew a lot of prayers than we do.
Okay.
He knew and understood the Quran very well.
Okay.
He didn't choose to recite any verse of the Quran,
Okay.
but chose to recite Azan,
Okay.
and then the Ikamat.
Okay.
So there are a lot of wisdom in this. So if you are unable to grasp all the reasons for his choice of this particular choice, that is choosing Ikamat and then Azan,
Okay.
then that is okay. That is you, because you are limited. But this is the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam you are talking about.
Okay.
So for the fact that he initiated that, he started that, and what is practice, his sunnah, then it is binding on us to also start that. You don't go about and say, because you are a Hafiz, and you have all the Quran there, so you start something, doing your own thing.
Okay.
After reciting, after saying the Azan and then the Ikamat, you can later recite several verses of the Quran to your child.
Yes.
As you have the child with you, trying to put him or her into sleep. You can recite Quranic verses. That is okay. But the point is that the sunnah is that just as it is born, you have to make sure the Azan is called, and then the Ikamat is called, and nothing else. And one of the many reasons, as I said, is because it's sunnah.
Okay.
We saw the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam do, so we have to follow suit.
Okay.
And another reason is that when you actually analyze or study the wordings of the Azan and the Ikamat, you realize that it revolves around the Tawheed of God, the oneness of God, and the fact that he's the one you should run to at any time, and the fact that running to him, in it is success, in it is victory. That's why we say Hayya al Falah. You see, so all these things is one of the many reasons why the Holy Prophet chose to say Azan and Ikamat in the ears of any child, any young baby.
Okay. Is it very necessary for us to actually speak to them physically, just as Muslims do? They pick the baby and then draw the baby's ear closer to their mouth and then make the sound, and then either recite the Azan and then the Ikamat. Doctor, are the children's ears that developed enough to receive such sound? Don't they have any negative effects on the ears of such children?
There is no effect, except that the intensity of the voice at which those words were being recited are so high, perhaps it over-vibrates the tympanic membrane and perhaps it may cause some damage. But apart from that, if these words are good, they are supposed to have a good impact on the child's life, then I think it's so fine. It's far okay than negative words, than bad words, than making the child grow up with so many bad, inputs from the parents. I think it's better for us to give a very good impression from the beginning.
So you are, by this, emphasizing or supporting the point that physically it has no effect on the ear if done carefully.
Yes, exactly.
That's what you mean.
Exactly.
Okay.
To what he said, that is, as he rightly mentioned, it doesn't mean because the Prophet said, go and call Azan in the child, and then you start shouting into this innocent baby. You just, in just a low tone, low voice, you can just recite this and nothing will happen. But if you are to the extreme and then you are shouting as if you are calling Azan for people to come for prayers, you are going to cause more harm than good. Yes, physically.
Are there particular people within the Muslim community that are supposed to call the Azan to the child? Because in this case, you have agreed that equally the thing will have to be done in a moderate manner so that it does not affect the hearing of the child. What is the measure? Can anybody at all get up and then do this?
Yeah, sure. Whoever is around at the time,
Okay.
and then knows the weddings of Azan and Ikamat can do it, but preferably the parents,
Okay.
or specifically the father,
Okay.
is better. He is around, and then he does that.
Okay.
But if he's not around, and the mother is there, the mother can do it.
Okay.
If there is any other person, the person can do it equally.
Okay.
So as to specifically who is to do it, whoever knows the weddings can do it, but preferably the parents should do that for the child.
Yes, speaking to babies, words that they do not understand, you have mentioned it. These children don't understand what you are saying. Why insist on doing it?
Like he rightly explained, in the scientific point of view,
Okay.
all these weddings are recorded.
Okay.
The child won't be able to interpret them, but they are recorded, and it has a long-term effect on the child. Because he mentioned that even from the womb, it starts hearing.
Okay.
And among the 5 senses, that is the very first one that develops.
Okay.
So after the 9 months when it's born, I mean, you can imagine to what extent the baby can hear. Let me also add this, that it's very interesting, this point, because the Quran makes or alludes to this point.
Okay.
That is to say, the ear is the very first of the senses that develops.
Okay.
In the whole Quran, Allah the Almighty, in Surah Ad-Dahr, in chapter 76, verse 3, Allah the Almighty says, إِنَّا خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِن نُطْفَةٍ أَمْشَاجٍ نَبْتَلِيهِ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ سَمِيعًا بَصِيرًا. And in the whole Quran, every order Allah the Almighty adopts has so much wisdom in it. So that when Allah says Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, there's so much wisdom in why he did not say Ar-Rahim or Rahman.
Okay.
Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim has so much wisdom. Of course, we are not going to that, but here Allah said, فَجَعَلْنَاهُ سَمِيعًا بَصِيرًا. And we made him, that is man, Sami'an, hearing, before what? Basiran.
Okay.
That is to say, the hearing comes first, then the seeing and any other thing will come.
Okay.
This buttresses the scientific findings, which was revealed to the Holy Prophet about 1,400 years ago, that among the senses, the ear is what develops faster. That is why when the child is born, don't open the eyes to anything. First, say something into the ears, because that one had already developed. There's another verse which supports this scientific finding. That is in Surah Bani Israel, chapter 17, verse 37, when Allah said, وَلَا تَكْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. Again, the sequence is to be observed. Inna sam'a, surely the hearing, wal basara, and the eyes, wal fu'ada, and the heart. Kullu ulaika kana anhu mas'ula. All these things shall be questioned. Okay, about how you use them. So here the sequence again. Allah did not start with basar, the eye. Neither did he start with fu'ad, the heart. He again started with sama. This it gives us the clear evidence that indeed among the senses, the ear develops first. That is why the Holy Prophet instructed, and it was the sunnah of the Holy Prophet to call Azan and Ikamat in the ears of a child.
Okay. Why not start this whilst the mother is still pregnant? Because it is at that point all these things, developments start. Why?
Well, as he said, it was developing.
Okay.
So you can't tell at what point. In fact, after the child is born, then you are convinced that the development has is completed.
Okay.
Because it's a stage. It's a stage it's going through.
Okay.
So at a point, is it 24 weeks, it's developed, it starts. But when it's fully completed, to hear properly is when the child is born.
Okay.
So in Allah's infinite wisdom, conveyed to the Holy Prophet ﷺ, instructed that when the child is born, that is when you should call Azan.
Okay.
But having said this, it doesn't also mean that because the child is not yet born, anything unnecessary should be the mother should experience or should be engaged in something unnecessary.
Okay.
Because it's developing, but to some extent it might still receive or contain some, register some few words,
okay.
few things which might ultimately affect the baby. So mothers are even advised to say good words, to be in good environment where she keeps on listening to good things that is going to have a positive effect on the child.
Yes, but looking at this, some children are born deaf. They cannot hear.
Deaf.
I don't know whether that is actually correct. But first of all, before I come to that, let me go to doctor. Is it possible that from birth, some children are born deaf? Or it is in the process of birth that the deafness of the ear occurs?
A lot of things go into the development of a very healthy, viable baby in the end. There are so many things that mother can do which can affect the baby's development.
Okay.
Infections and the taking of toxins, trauma, and all that could affect the baby.
Yeah.
So if the mother is not taking good care of herself, there are a lot of medications we give to mothers who are pregnant that are supposed to be neuroprotective, are supposed to help with the development and enhancement of the neurological system.
Yeah.
So if mother is not taking these medications, there is a tendency that it will affect the neurological system, and then you could give birth to a child who is deaf, as you are saying. During the course of the delivery itself, there could be traumatization of the baby due to the handling of the baby and all that, and that could even affect you. So I mentioned that the ear is into 3 different parts, and any part that gets affected will affect the hearing process. Okay. And so whether it's in the brain or it's in the ear itself, the middle, the inner or the outer, any part of it, it could affect the baby's hearing process. And so it is important, to consider from the beginning to the end of the baby, good care is taken out throughout the process.
Okay.
Exactly.
So, yes, Movi, you seem to concur with doctor on his position of this issue of hearing and the periods. Now, if a child is born deaf, how then do you still call the Azan? Because at this point, you wouldn't even know if this child born is deaf or not. So what then would be the effect? After all, the one you are speaking to hasn't got a tendency to understand. The ability isn't there for them to understand.
Right, so like I said, it's the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that you would have to call. Okay. Because at that time, you can't, as you mentioned, you can't ascertain as to whether the child is deaf or hearing.
Okay.
You can't know. Okay. So you would have to call the Azan. Allah in his finite knowledge, although the Azan couldn't reach there, but Allah is all powerful. He might in one way or the other have mercy on the child for the fact that there has been several attempts to relay this message that God is one, you should not associate any partners with him and all that. So as a father, you would have to play your part, but it is not for you to determine as whether at that point in time he can hear or not.
Okay. So
there are recent technology to be able to detect whether a baby has a normal functioning hearing system, if I should say, or an auditory system, if I should say. And so we are able to pick up now, very early, at that neonatal stage, whether the baby has intact hearing abilities or not.
Okay.
So that is how recent we have gone.
Okay.
And just to add a little bit to certain findings in science concerning the hearing, there has been instances where individuals who have grown very old and have been known not to have been able to speak certain languages after going through certain traumatizations, accidents or whatever, they begin to speak certain particular languages. And people were wondering why. And there is this physiology of a brain plasticity in which the brain tries to conserve itself and its memory as much as it can in certain instances where you have accidents or trauma. And it depends on the extent to which the brain is able to conserve, the memory. For some individuals, it's unable to conserve anymore. For others too, there is even a flare-up of already buried information in the brain system. And so for such individuals, it was later found out in psychiatry that they had been exposed to languages in their infancy, which nobody was aware of. And subsequently, throughout the accidents and those particular processes they have gone through, there is a flare-up of all those knowledge back into that individual's life. And so they are able to speak languages that they were exposed to in their infancy. And so it goes again to buttress the point that it's very important that we speak words which are very good, which have good impact into the lives of our children. Because as they grow up with these things, and the brain may not register them very early, but subsequently the brain will definitely bring them up due to certain circumstances that they may be going through.
Thank you very much for the submission. Any final word?
Please
be brief.
So as it's been proven scientifically also, and the Quran has stated this many years ago, that one of the first organ to the senses that develops faster is the hearing. Hence, the Holy Prophet instruction that you should call Azan and then Ikama in the ears of the child. So I will reiterate that every parent should make it a point to do this as a sunnah of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. That is going to go a long way to help the child.
Doctor.
So the final thing that I would just want to add is, based on all the ayats that has been mentioned, it goes a long way to tell that it's very important we pay particular attention to what we hear, because it has so much effect on our body. Unlike the eyes that we are able to shut it down when we are sleeping, you can't shut down your ears, because your ears is almost always in its active state. Or even when you are in the darkness, you can't see, but then you can still hear. It goes a long way to tell us the importance of listening, the importance of hearing. And so I think it's very imperative that we pay close attention from infancy, whatever we give to our children, whatever they hear till they grow.
Thank you very much for the submission there. Viewer, this is all that time will allow. And I think we have been educated enough today on the topic, on the essence of calling the Azan and Ikamat through the ears of a newly born baby. I think there is a concurrence of ideas here that the hearing of the child or the human being is the first thing that develops in the development of the human senses. A doctor has mentioned that clearly, and this has been supported by Molvi Sharif in his submissions, and it is advocated that from infancy we need to be speaking positive words, valued words to the child at the very tender age. Because when they grow up, even though at the very early stages, especially at birth, they cannot still comprehend these words, but later on in their development life, they get to understand these things and could interpret them. This is where the show has brought us today on Islam and Science. Molvi Sharif bin Jafar is a lecturer at Jamia International, and Dr. Ishraq Nur Ismail is a medical practitioner at the Tema General Hospital. They have been my guests on the show, Islam and Science. I am Hafiz Din Akram. Join us same day, same time next week for another production. May the peace and blessings of Allah the Almighty be upon us.